Hello, everybody. From Blue Willow Bookshop in Houston, Texas, I am Kathy Berner, the event coordinator at the shop. We are honored to host this virtual event celebrating Alexis Hall's new novel, Husband Material, part of the London Calling series. So let's welcome Alexis to the screen.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Hi, Alexis.
Hi. I should be used to this by now because I've done two of these, but I'm always a bit kind of, what do I say? Hello. Hi.
Well, we are so glad to have you. It's just an utter joy. Hang on, I'm setting up a couple things. Okay, that's good for the recording. So congratulations on publication day.
Thank you very much.
It is just such a joy to be able to celebrate this with you and with everybody who's on the call. I'm seeing all kinds of countries and states and everything. We're so delighted. And I did tell you before we started that I was going to say some nice things about you, and you can deflect them as much as you want, but I'm going to say them. Your work is extraordinary. It is truly extraordinary. I've read this several times. Y'all look at the tabs. I went to town with the tabs. And I've listened to it, and every time I find something new and joyous. And I'm just so grateful to you for writing something that's hilarious and poignant and wise and so beautifully full of banter.
Thank you.
You just deliver it so well. Before we get into the questions, I want to talk a little bit about people whose work supports the gorgeousness of Husband Material. First of all, Elizabeth Turner Stokes and this beautiful cover, this beautiful, beautiful cover. You must be so excited to have that out in the world.
Oh, I'm super overjoyed. No, the covers are always great. I genuinely credit the cover for at least 30% of the success of the book.
I think that's a fair point. I would also just point out that Elizabeth did announce on social media that she has opened a Redbubble store. So now, I already have my Oliver Blackwood mug from the Redbubble store, but I ordered all the stickers and I ordered another mug from her. So I am so excited about that and looking forward to how she grows that as she moves forward with your work.
No, I'm so glad.
And I'm seeing the only thing up here that lots of people are commenting on the audio, Joe Jameson.
No, Joe's amazing.
He's amazing. And I'm sure everybody else feels this too. If you've listened to it and then you read the book separately, even before you've heard the audio for Husband Material.
Yeah.
You hear him reading it in your head. and I did see your tweet this morning about that chapter. And wow. He just delivers it once again. And I'm so excited that your team was able to bring him back in. I also want to give a shout out to the team at Sourcebooks, who has amazingly developed these books, are so supportive and created a great activity book. And they're just such a fun team to work with. And then finally, I'm going to start with one question that comes from someone named Mary, who wants to know, who is the best author assistant and why is it Mary?
I wonder who that question should come from. Yeah, it's Mary. Mary's great. I genuinely couldn't do, I just couldn't keep up with the business of being me without what Mary does just to support stuff behind the scenes. So yes, big love to Mary and so on.
Big love to Mary, absolutely. Francois, I did see your question. Alexis does not show his face, so you're getting the beautiful cover of Husband Material designed by Elizabeth Turner Stokes. So there you go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to some of the pre-submitted questions. One is, did you always see this as a series? And that kind of ties into the massive announcement yesterday. So for those who are not aware of the amazing news that had me shrieking yesterday, can you please share with the class?
So, so the announcement yesterday is recently there are definitely 2 more books scheduled. The next book that is scheduled was, I think, as you were mentioning in the pre-show, it's mentioned in the Q&A in the back under, I think, the title of The Amnesia Plot. It's now under the hopefully final title of 10 Things That Never Happened, which is a spin-off story following a character who has a cameo in this book by the name of Jonathan. And his story and all that involves. There's some questions about that later, which I'll get into in more detail. Following that, so year after, there will be a 3rd book in the. It's one of those odd ones where it will be the 3rd book in the Luke and Oliver trilogy and the 4th book in the London Calling series, which will be probably the final Luke and Oliver book, unless something strange happens.
And what's that called?
That would be called Father Material, again, subject to change.
Yes. And Alexis, I forgot to mention that. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. There's also after that, there's a second spin-off scheduled, which will be telling Tyler's story. Tyler is another character who has a small cameo in Husband Material.
I cannot wait for that. Just a note that I forgot to mention, some of the questions that we are going to cover are answered in the back of the finished copy of Husband Material through a Q&A that Sourcebooks asked me to put together for Alexis, which was an incredible honor and not a little nerve-wracking, but there is at the very back, Spotlight on Booksellers, Q&A with Alexis Hall and Kathy Berner. So that was very fun. I had a good time
worth pointing
asking
just for the Q&A.
Yes. So we're going to stray from that, but there is some of it in here. All right, there's that. Let me put that one down. Okay, the first thing I want to touch base with you on is the age continuity of Oliver and Christopher.
Oh, yes. So annoyingly, I checked this about 6 times and missed it. When I was working particularly on the bits of Husband Material that go into more detail with Oliver and Christopher's relationship, when I was developing Oliver's relationship with his parents, more all the stuff that evolves around that. Again, I appreciate that presumably a lot of the people in the chat haven't read the book yet, so I don't want to go into too much detail. It was very clear to me that Christopher had quite strong younger brother energy, and Oliver had quite strong older brother energy. But what I had missed is that I think when I was writing the initial pitch for the book, because I still in the situation where the way I will do a book is I will do a 20,000 word pitch, send it off, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. About 4 years ago now, there's a throwaway line in the scene where Luke and Oliver are first together on their first date in the restaurant, where he mentions he's got an older brother named Christopher. And I checked all of Christopher's scenes to make sure I had Christopher's characterization consistent, and I checked there to see if there was any reference to how old he was and things. But I didn't think to check the first time it was actually mentioned in the book. So yes, there is a slight inconsistency between the books, because that sometimes happens with people who are made up. That will be corrected in electronic versions of. So I couldn't go and rewrite Husband Material with a different dynamic. That would be silly. But that is corrected going forward in future editions of Boyfriend Material. The line older has been removed from that one scene that I wrote about 4 years ago.
It's all good. It's all good. Monica's got a question. Husband Material has a 2-year time jump that shows a more established relationship. Do you hope this will help move the needle in the romance genre to include more stories about long-term relationships?
That's again, people who've been to these before, you'll know that I always start by saying, good question. I'm going to answer a slightly different question instead.
That's fine.
I have very little faith in my own ability to move the needle, partly because I think one of the things that's really difficult about interacting with creators whose work you are familiar with is it's very easy to way overestimate how famous like authors you like are, and I'm nowhere near big enough that I can move that kind of thing on my own. I would love to see more stories about existing relationships, maybe in a really, really tiny, grain of sand in an avalanche way. I can be a little tiny part of that. Someone's asking for live captions instantly. I speak very, very fast, and I apologize for that. I will try and speak slower. I'd love it to be something that's moved towards. I think it's difficult because romance particularly is a very trope-driven genre, and there just aren't that many tropes for established relationships. There's second chance love, there's marriage in peril, and I kind of want to say there's no other bugger. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple, but I like saying and there's no other bugger. It's quite hard. It's that, or you do the only other way to do it really is to do the kind of the really classic romance trilogy where you get together in the first book, break up in the second book, get back together in the third book. And again, that's very specific and not always what you're gonna do. So I'd love there to be more. I'd love to do more of this kind of thing. Realistically, genres change very slowly.
They do, but I really do appreciate the established relationships. And I think seeing them mature and go through that, it was especially enjoyable and meaningful in this one. And I'm very eager to see how you will do it in to be named, but let's call it father material for now. What was the easiest and hardest part about revising or about revisiting Luke and Oliver? Both Tatiana and Mel wanted to know that.
Easiest, like the characters are familiar me to me. Sorry, it's 1 a.m. in my country, so I'm a little bit odd. The characters are very familiar to me at this stage, and like you know that thing where you go on holiday somewhere, you get to the end of the week, and it's like you've always been there, but also like no time has passed. Then you come back next year, and it's like you never left. It's very much like that. So going back into Luke and Oliver's world was pretty instantaneous, and the vibe of that world came out very easily. What was difficult was the aforementioned, well, there's much less structure when you're dealing with an established relationship, when you're doing a sequel to a book where they got together, and you're not doing the they break up in the middle thing. Spoiler, they don't break up in the middle. And of course, this might be something we talk about more later, kind of navigating the fact that I was aware that it was a popular book. People like the original, people are going to have expectations. You're not going to please everyone. So just getting a sense of what is actually the right thing to do, a good thing to do with book 2 was quite hard. And I think I'm pleased with the choices I made and the structure I picked. But that was the heart of it.
Well, you did a great job. You exceeded expectations, in my opinion. And, you know, I have just read, there's just, man, you could like pick a page or pick a color, and I would find something on almost every page that resonated with me, that made me laugh, that made me choke up. It's just fantastic. I love it. Was there a topic? Quimey wants to know, was there a topic that you wanted to explore in boyfriend material that you didn't include, that you added or covered in husband material?
Sort of yes and no. I think so. I think one of the things I found quite interesting about, because people have had differing reactions to husband material because it's quite different from boyfriend material in a lot of ways. And to me, a lot of the themes are very similar, but I think husband material was able to address them more explicitly because the characters are now addressing them as part of an established relationship where you actually have to talk to each other about your feelings, rather than a getting together relationship where like you're spending half of it pretending that you're pretending to be in a relationship. So things like the question of whether Oliver has internalized homophobia is something he does wrestle with a bit in the first book, but it's more, I want to say sub-rosa, that's not really the right word. It's more subtextual, whereas it becomes more overt as you get closer to the wedding and they're exposed to other people's relationships developing in these very specifically coded ways. Similarly, like a lot of the ideas that I was gesturing towards with the whole setup of boyfriend material is that Luke needs to get a quote unquote suitable boyfriend because donors are concerned that he's, you know, sort of the wrong kind of gay man. And again, that kind of thing about expectations about what LGBTQ people are meant to be like, what they're expected to be like, what relationships like have to look like to be valid or don't have to look like, and fitting into boxes. They're all ideas the first book kind of also looked at, whereas in the second book we're getting into more depth.
Yeah, I agree. A couple comments to everybody watching. Please use the Q&A because that's what I'm going to look to find questions once we're done going through these, because I can't scroll up and down um, on the chat, which is going by so rapidly. And I do apologize that captions are not available, but we will make sure they're available on YouTube when it's uploaded so you can have a re-listen. So I appreciate your patience on that. Thanks for pointing that out. And we will incorporate that as we move forward in future events. You kind of talked about this, but I'm going to let you throw in anything else that you might want to. From Sophie, what ideas about marriage, the societal pressure to get married, and the specific symbolic weight of marriage for queer relationships did you want to explore with this book? Is there anything else you want to add?
And in a way, just to point to the question, would be that it's and that in some ways that feels very, it feels like a slightly cheap answer, but I don't think I didn't have a specific conclusion I wanted to come to. I think what I wanted to do was explore the idea that those questions and those ideas are very different for everybody. Part of the reason that I went with the 4 wedding structure in the end is because it's very specific. You get 4 different weddings, all of which are very, very different. You have one that's incredibly traditional high church, and you have one that's very kind of friends and family, and it's about celebrating our love, and one that's very like kind of queer coded. We're going to reclaim this institution for our community. And I wanted to look at the intersection of the extent to which LGBTQ plus people can feel alienated by the trappings of mainstream society, but the way that LGBTQ plus people can also feel alienated by the trappings of LGBTQ plus culture, and that some people can kind of, one of the things that sort of becomes clear with Oliver in the book is he kind of falls under the cracks, and he's in some ways alienated by both. So that is one of those things where I think anymore, and I'm just describing the books.
You are, but as we talked in the green room, I think that tension is handled exquisitely. And so it's so well done. It's so well balanced, nuanced. It feels very authentic because, as someone said earlier in the chat, these people are made up. They're not made up in my life. I mean, as far as I know, these people exist in real life. And you just, again, you threaded the needle. You did it so beautifully.
Thank you.
Tan Mai wants to know, who is your favorite character who is not Luke or Oliver?
To write, at least it's kind of got to be Alex, just because I really like it's genuinely complex one. Like one of the things that I keep grappling with and I keep sort of addressing in the text in a slightly lampshady way. In many ways, Alex is a reprehensible person. I mean, he almost certainly votes Tory. He's a member of the landed aristocracy. He's a huge part of the problem with this country. As anyone who's followed anything that's happened in my country in the last ever will realize, but that archetype is cute. It's a fun archetype, and I do grapple with the extent to which making that archetype fun, when in a lot of ways it's like it's difficult because it's the Boris Johnson problem. Like, Boris Johnson was fun when he wasn't fucking the country.
Yeah, that's fair. I will also say that, holy cow, do you have some Judy lines in this one?
Thank you.
I was trying to not get back into the vibe, but like really deeply be present. And I was driving today and listening to the audio in the car. Man, she just anyway, when y'all get to it, you'll know you got to it, because it is peak Judy. Monica, having picked up on the 4 weddings Richard Curtis love fest, will the next book in the series be based on a beloved movie rom-com?
Yes, but different. And no, actually, I don't think I'm ever going to do anything as close as the 4 weddings thing again. Like the 4 weddings thing with husband material, it just seemed really necessary is not quite the right word. So the third. So Father Material is sort of probably going to be loosely inspired by About a Boy, but very, very, very loosely. But the book formerly known as the Amnesia Plot is sort of inspired by a slightly different style of 90s rom-com, slightly more towards the screwball end, slightly more towards the Sandra Bullocky end. It's got a slight While You Were Sleeping vibe.
Oh my
As always,
God.
As always, it will be my hope to capture these things, whether you feel I have to see it or not. It is always up for you.
Okay, I can wait 14 months for that. I can do that.
Sadly, it's not going to be like Speed. No, there's going to be no scenes where they're on a bus and they can't slow down.
No, but like, okay, for people who did pre-submit their receipts and got that chapter, it was delivered this morning, right? I believe so.
It's dealt with it. Other people
dealt with it. I'm assuming that it went through. But my God, the way you create this group of people who work together, and it's hilarious, just like all those crap people, like whether it's the professor or it's Reese or it's Alex and Barbara, and oh my God, the photocopier. Really? The photocopier. Okay, friends, I'm going to reach out to Sourcebooks. I promise I'm going to reach out to Sourcebooks and find out what's going on with that, because I believe Sourcebooks was handling it. So I will follow up on it. And when I send my summary email, those of you who filled it out, I'll let you know. First chapter. Hang on, I got to write myself a note. And I have to spell chapter right. Sourcebook. Okay. Back to the question. Sorry, I digressed. Bex wants to know, as excited as she is for husband material, already looking forward to the third book. One of the main characters, Jonathan, makes a brief appearance in husband material, and is an epic grump. Oh my gosh, he is. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Okay. The person who was supposed to send it out is dealing with COVID. So I know that it will come out very soon, and let's all be patient, and it's going to be great when it comes out. All right, going back to Beck's question. Already looking forward to your third book. Jonathan is an epic grump, possibly my favorite type of romantic personality. And he's messy, just like Luke is messy. Like, why you write messy characters really beautifully, and what do you enjoy about that?
I think I'm a messy person myself, partly. I like writing unsympathetic characters. Much like I sometimes grapple with Alex, because he's actually those people in real life are actually not great. I'm always a little bit conscious of the difficult unsympathetic character thing, where it can go into some really difficult, like, you just tells it like it is spaces. But I like people who I like writing people who aren't happy. What can I say? Partly because you can help them get happy over the course of the book, which is nice. I like finding a space to sympathize with people who maybe aren't terribly pleasant. And also it helps work through, I think it helps one work through one's own mess.
Fair. It's also, they're interesting.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
The other thing, I mean, you're talking about unlikable characters, and I know we're all here for husband material, London Calling, and I'm not going to derail this. I'm just saying one word, and that word is amberglass.
Oh yes, yeah, there is that. We'll see how that one goes.
So, oh my God. Okay, back to this. God, I'm just having the best time, like, celebrating this and seeing all the stuff in the chat. It's so fun.
Having a lovely time too.
Okay. Have you, Michaela wants to know, have you ever thought about writing a book from Oliver's perspective? They've always wanted to know what was going through his head when Luke was in the bathroom and the hours following it.
I occasionally get this question, and I think what happens is that I go, maybe I could. And then I go, no, wait, I chose to write this book single POV for a reason. My perception is that whenever I've seen a high profile example of a book that's done the now it's from the other person's POV thing, it hasn't worked super great. I think characters who are designed to be POV characters and characters designed not to be POV characters don't necessarily work so well. So I think it's the kind of, I think also, again, because I'm a big Death of the Author person, there are some things I think are deliberately supposed to be left for the reader to figure out.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Um, okay. Emily only discovered your work with boyfriend material, and now she's discovering all of your backlist. And she wants to know what it was like when you first started your writing career, and was it ever hard to keep going?
What was it like when I started? It was a long time ago. It was a very different market. Is it hard to keep going? Sometimes. I mean, most things are hard when they are. Most things are hard sometimes. When you do something for 10 years, there's always ups and downs. I think for me, the hardest bits for me were I talk a lot about Red, White, and World Blue because it really did change the landscape, and it was really noticeable that just the kinds of books that publishers were interested in buying pretty much changed overnight when Red, White, and World Blue happened. So prior to that, there were times you're like, okay, I'm not necessarily in a position where I can sell the books I want to sell. This isn't necessarily great for me. I don't think I ever seriously considered quitting, but yeah, there were always times when there were always times when it was hard. Never impossible, but hard.
How'd you keep going?
How are you going? Bloody mindedness, I think mostly. Yeah, bloody mindedness, terrible fear of failure. Just kind of, and coffee, just a lot of coffee.
Well, I am grateful to coffee and bloody mindedness, and I'm sorry that you have a fear of failure, but I'm very grateful for it because holy cow, the output that you are creating is brings me a lot of joy, and I know brings everybody else a lot of joy too. Just a shout out to Nicole. Yes, Oscar in Chris Ripper's book. Is it Boyfriend Project? Oh my gosh, such a grump. Love that. Okay, Kaz, do you prefer writing series or standalones, and how much does that format influence how you approach writing?
I like both. There's a certain there's a freedom to writing either a series or at least a multi-book deal, which is that you know the publisher's got skin in the game.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that perspective.
Because it means that they're much less likely to drop you after one book if they've already committed to put out the second book, which means there's at least, just from a pure like game theory, like brinksmanship perspective, it's a lot. There's a lot more incentive for them to make a go of things, even if things are rough initially. I think there's a lot of value in standalones. I don't have favorites at all, and I don't like talking about my own work. So having favorites amongst my own work is kind of a double whammy for me. But I really like a lot of my standalones. At least one of my standalones was vaguely originally intended as a series. Like Ali Fair the Mysterious Letter was originally intended to be part of a series, but just didn't quite. There were things that happened there. By contrast, Boyfriend Material was originally intended as a standalone, went up as a series. So it's it doesn't, it impacts, but also doesn't impact because things can wind up one way or the other. The last book that was mentioned was The Affair of the Mysterious Letter, which was a fantasy novel. I had plans for follow up, which I would have gone with if the publisher had been interested in picking it up, but they weren't.
Okay, so we're digressing a little bit. I'm just going to do a couple quick. Well, they're not going to be quick, but whatever. There's a lot of comments in the chat, miniseries, movies. I mean, I would imagine that you're excited about that potential.
I try to moderate my excitement. So what I would say is that I'm a big believer. So first of all, I love TV, I love film, and you'd have to be a fool not to recognize the power of visual media to shift copy. But I'm also kind of a realist. I think what I would say is like a lot of my books have been optioned before. In practice, what that means, even though, for example, there was an announcement actually a little while ago about the Fossil Parliament movie, which has been optioned. But what that means in practice is that some people have paid me a small amount of money for the right to not make a film or TV show out of something.
Right.
So generally, don't assume anything's happening until you start getting people doing reels on set, I think is what I think.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm super excited in a deeply where it might not happen way.
Yep, you're managing your expectations.
Yes, exactly.
That is a very wise thing to do. Let's talk briefly, because we are moving away. I'm looking at my list.
But of course.
The Spires series.
Yes.
The Glitterland. Oh, Glitterland. Oh my God. Friends, get the audio of Glitterland. Oh my God. Exactly. Nicholas Bolton, Glitterland. Get the audio and listen to it, and then get ready for January 17th, 2023, when you'll get to hold that beautiful cover design. Oh my God. It's everything to me. I love it so much. Anyway, Spires, you're re-releasing them with Sourcebooks.
Yes, that's correct.
And that is listed on your website, which I keep turning over here, friends. I've got all the books listed on the website over here. By the way, his website is beautiful. It is extremely well designed and very intuitive. So you can find any information you need on that website.
It's had an overhaul. It's much shinier now.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautifully done. I'm trying to remember the name of the person who did it, and they did a beautiful job. We talked about it earlier. It was great.
Joelle?
Yeah. It's such a well-designed website. Okay. Mary Hale. This is a little random. If Luke and Oliver were a dessert, which dessert would they be?
I got this one in advance. I spent far too long thinking about it. It's a little bit cheesy to say Oliver would be a lemon posset, because there is a lemon posset scene, but I think he probably would be.
Posset? A lemon posset, you say?
Yes. It's but I think really, I think of the two, I think Oliver is the more lemon possety in some ways, because he's kind of sort of refined, but in a way that's got layers to it you don't always expect. I back and forth on whether Luke would be an eaten mess or not, because he's definitely a mess. I was going to say he's not very eaten, but I think it's important. One of the things that Luke occasionally confronts in husband material is he's actually quite a lot posher than he pretends to be. Like, his parents are very rich and his mum lives with a large aristocrat. So I think Luke's an eaten mess.
Lots of people think he's the vegan brownie.
He could also do vegan brownie.
Yeah, man, I really want that vegan brownie from Bronwyn's. Actually, I just want Bronwyn's restaurant to open a pop-up here in Houston so I can go there, because I would eat all of it. Okay. How about the Royce Royces? Any thought on what dessert they would be?
So, the more extravagant James Royce, I think I was a chef, which is weird, but I think ironically he'd be the kind of dessert he'd never serve. So I think he's one of those really. I think in this country you call it a Knickerbocker glory. I think in America you just call it a sun, like the really
yes,
the really
yes,
big,
that massive sundae from Harrods. Yes,
stuck in the top that you can't even eat.
Yeah.
And I think the other James Royce would probably be a really intense dark chocolate torte.
Yes, very fair. I would go with that. Excellent. Chris says, you've written some amazing trans female characters like Viola George and Poppy Carey. Do you think you'll write a trans masculine or NB character at some point? They're not counting the brief references to Malcolm in boyfriend material.
So already have. I talked earlier about the Affair of the Mysterious Letter. That's a sort of that's a fantasy Holmes and Watson thing. But the narrator, the Watson analog, is a trans dude. One of my very first novellas / short story series was the Prosperity Verse, and the primary romantic interest in that is a non-binary sky wizard. There's a couple of other minor non-binary interest supporting characters in some other books. Oh, and there's a maid, Peggy in Something Fabulous is a gender fluid person and is a major supporting character and is the protagonist of the forthcoming sequel, Something Spectacular. And there's a fairly minor transmasculine character in Husband Material who is getting his own book in a couple of years' time, because it's going to be like book 5.
It's fine. You take your time. We will wait. Lucas would like to know, if you could enter one of your books, what would it be and which character would you be?
Obviously the contempt ones are essentially set in the real world, so that would be a bit pointless. I think the historicals would be bad because the like real Regency England would be terrible. Like, you know, I'd rather have, you know, Bulwer on soap. So I tend to go. So I lean towards fantasy ones. I think so. I think I'd probably want to visit the setting of the Pharaoh and the Imperious Letter because it's a fantasy world, so you can take all the poo out. I think I'm torn between whether I'd rather be Scheherazade or Wyndham. Like Scheherazade is cooler, but I think I'm more suited to be the guy that follows the cooler person around, making impressed comments and writing down their adventures.
Yeah, that's fair. Anna just shouted out the Billionaire series. Yes, Anna. Yes. All the books, all of them. From Katie, are you going to do another bonus content letter for husband material? And could new newsletter subscribers ever get a chance to see the deleted boyfriend material scenes?
I'm not totally convinced that I've got a good. So with deleted scenes in particular, very often I get this one just even if I watch deleted scenes on DVDs on like actually back in those when DVDs were a thing, which is very often if I watch deleted scenes from a film, I look and go, yep, I can see why that was deleted. And often when I'm looking at deleted scenes from my own work, I'm like, yep, I can see why that was deleted. So generally I only share deleted scenes if I think they're like sweet or cool or funny or something new. I might have something to share from husband material. I will say that the one significant deletion from husband material, and this might upset people, is in an early draft. Instead of there being there's a big argument between looking at all the like overwriting stuff before the funeral, in the funeral part of the funeral thing, and in an original draft, one of Judy's dogs died.
Alexis!
I know. And that was very much my editor's reaction as well. So that was it wasn't like I did change that because because people did feel that. But there's quite a funny scene where Odile calls up to say that one of the dogs has died, but she expresses it badly, and they think that Judy has died. Which I think weirdly from chat's reaction, people would have been less bothered by. But there is a there is a reason that I cut the dead dogs.
Now that you phrase it, I'm raising my hand. I would like to read it. I would read that deleted scene, because if you said that Odile's delivering the news, and okay, see, everybody else wants to see it too.
Yeah, there was a long extended dog funeral as well, which was in some ways I thought was quite touching, but also I think it was probably the wrong call for the book.
Okay, wrong, but like I think it could still be a lovely bonus material.
I think some of it could be. It's
I know. I mean, I grew up with dogs too. My family's had to have a funeral for a garter snake.
Yeah.
It's, but there is some hilarious, and they are, remember, these are imaginary, although I do acknowledge that pets passing can be very traumatic.
No, exactly.
Oh my God. I can only imagine what Odile is going to do, because again, I know I've already, celebrated Judy here, but oh my, does Odile come through in so many ways.
In terms of the other thing I should quickly address is catching up with older content. This is a difficult one because I don't want people to feel that they've missed out, but I also don't want people who've already seen the older content to feel that they're just getting recycled content. I sometimes try and make older content available in the future in ways like I think there's some older newspaper content made its way into the advent calendar and things. So generally, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So generally, it's unlikely to pop up in the newsletter again, but I'll usually try and make things available in some other way at some point in the future, and I sometimes do end-of-year roundups and things.
And I do, and you mentioned the anti-advent calendar. If you go back in Alexis's Instagram feed, I want to say it's during the month of January. There's like the little doors and there's all this fun content. So I highly recommend that you explore that. Okay, now we're going to look at the questions that have been submitted. 72, we're not going to go through all of them. but I will again try to package everything up to Alexis, and he can decide what he wants to do with it, whether he does another beautiful blog post like he did after Lady for a Duke. It's up to him, but I will pass it on. All right, here is one from Stacy. She hopes that you are doing well, but also wants to know how you're doing with so many major releases this year, not to mention the crazy announcement yesterday. She hopes that you are doing well.
I am doing fine, yes. It's, yeah, I've got quite a high workload. Well, I'll always say this is not something you should aspire to. I went off this situation by accident, but yes, I am doing fine, thank you.
Excellent. La, 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 la. Okay. Let me keep moving down. How did you get the idea for the balloon arch?
I think I was just coming up with sort of a list of things that of symbolic things that Oliver would feel alienated by, and Rainbow Balloon Arch had a nice rhythm to it, and it just as the book developed, it just kind of naturally became a thing to get called back to. So it became sort of this, in some ways, quite dark running joke, because obviously it's a genuine sort of tension between them, but also there's something just inherently funny, I think, about the phrase Rainbow Balloon Arch.
I would agree, and let me tell you, being at the party store yesterday, there is so like there's now an entire aisle devoted to balloon backdrops.
They're a thing.
I had no idea until I read your book and then went and hung out in the party store. Eleanor would like to know how the duck children are doing.
Well, Ducky's actually with me right now. She's saying hi, but you can't really see her or hear her. I'm sorry.
That is okay. Glad Ducky's doing well. Someone did ask, I might have passed it by already. Someone did ask, is there a chance for movie and TV? We are cautiously optimistic. Things have been optioned, but that doesn't always mean that anything is going anywhere.
Exactly.
What makes you choose to write? This is from Katie. What makes you choose to write in first versus third, dual point of view, single point of view?
It's very much a feel thing. So the basic one is that, like, how your first person is more intimate, often it's more immediate. Some of it, so for example, because I wanted a very the kind of rom-com the boyfriend husband material are based on tends to follow one character pretty much exclusively, therefore a single point of view, and tends to focus a lot on my character's sort of psychological inferiority, hence it's first person. With for example, the baking books, those, because they're kind of almost meant to feel like you're watching a reality TV show, it's done in third person to give you a little bit more distance. Rather than Serious Letter in first person because it's done like a home story. The next London Calling book is actually in first person present tense, because I wanted to give it even more of a feeling of immediacy. I know, isn't it?
Oh, it is. You're right.
Yeah. So it's about feel and about kind of it's about what feels right and what I want it to feel like, I think is the best way to put it.
Yep, I can see that. I can absolutely see that. Joanna asks, you have written books across many genres. Do you have a favorite genre to write, and what's your favorite genre to read?
This, as always, favorite questions. I'm bad at favorites.
I know.
I enjoy every genre I write in. That's why I write in all of them. There is a reason I gravitate back to romance. I find romance very compelling to work in. I like love stories. I think love stories are important. But I think every genre's got value to it and got sorry, just swallowing some water. And they've all got different strengths, different weaknesses. And I like to genre hop and cross genres. It's all fun. I'm reading similarly. I read very broadly, as people who follow my Goodreads will know. Not
only your Goodreads, but also your blog posts that talk about what you've read, what games you've played, what you've watched. Here is something someone's asking a question that reminds me about all the gorgeous fan art that you post on your Instagram. If any of those creators are watching, thank you, because holy cow, seeing that take another, seeing the fandom take another, not life form, but see it expressed creatively in a different way is so amazing.
It's slightly humbling. It's always good.
It is just stunning. And again, I point you to his Instagram because every time I get to see more fan art, it just makes me so happy. And I do recognize some of the names in the questions and in the attendees, and I see you, and I'm so grateful for your contributions. I really, really am. Do you have any advice for people who want to write queer romance?
So I'm always hesitant to give advice if I'm qualified. So first of all, if the question says, do you want to write queer romance? Then always write some queer romance. Write some romance and put queer people in it. If you want to write queer romance and get it published, that gets into a whole complex thing where the thing I will always say is I can tell you how to get started if it's 10 years ago, or I can tell you how to get stuff published today if you've got 10 years of kind of history behind you.
Right.
And neither of those are entirely helpful. I've found, if you want to get published, get an agent is my basic thing. But then the question is how to get an agent. I think the other answer I gave to a similar question last time was see if you can find out who the agent of someone whose work you like is, and see if they're taking on new clients. So then at least you'll know they rep the kind of work that you like. But I will, since the question was just for people who want to write it, just write it. I would always stress the writing isn't magic, it's not mysterious, it's not special, and it's not only worth doing if you do it professionally. There's basically nothing in life that we think is only worth doing if you do it for money. We don't say you should only cook if you're a professional chef, or that you should only play football if you're a professional footballer, or have sex if you're a professional sex worker. That would be that's just not how we think about things. But for some reason, we think that you should only write if you're doing it for money, which is silly.
I agree with you. And the other thing I would point out, and is just that it takes a lot of work to do. We had an author at the store years ago, and she likened, if we see someone playing sports, we know that they have to practice, and we know that they have to train, and we know that there's a number of different steps that go into making it to any level. And because we are generally taught to write when we're in school, we assume that that's not as much of a skill as an athletic ability, but it is, and you have to treat it like that.
True, although again, with athletic abilities, it's you can choose to work at lots of different levels.
Absolutely, but I think you still have to practice.
Oh, absolutely, yes, no, absolutely.
It doesn't mean. How do I say it? Because I
know absolutely what you're saying, and it is important principle to own your craft. It's important to think about what you're doing. If that's what you want, I think the thing what I always come back to is know what you want out of what you're doing.
Yes. Oh, I'm writing that down. Know what you want. That's just a general life hack of what you're doing. Okay. Thank you for that. Here, Monique wants to know, how involved are you as the author with the audiobook narration? Do you provide any guidance to Joe, or does he just read it and do his Joe thing?
So mostly he does his Joe thing. So what will happen is that it'll vary from book to book. I'll usually get some kind of form or be asked to send out some notes just about pronunciation and things, and then use words for unusual names. But I don't do anything directorial or say how I want things done. So I think one of the questions that I've seen someone submit was about the fact that the James Royce Royces, he pronounces that he emphasizes them differently depending on which one he's talking about, and that was a pure Joeism. Something people occasionally like make comments to me about the country song bit, and it took me ages to work out what that was. And it's because there's a bit where Luke is leaving and talking about how it's like this bit in the country song where the guy's saying, "I wish I could stay with you and little Ellie Mae, but I've got to go and do a man thing." And it's kind of a throwaway line, but when it's in the audiobook, he does it in like a proper, like full on, like he's doing a country song. So it comes like a lot more strongly. And so it leaves a really strong impression with people. And so people keep being like, "I love that bit." Like, what bit? Oh, that bit, right.
Well, it's like what he does, what Joe does when Luke and Oliver are in the car talking about a certain film, and Oliver, and turning it into a musical, and Oliver like improvises this, which I know like you improvised it and you wrote it, but the way Joe performed it. Yeah. Okay. Just Monica also saying, please can Joe narrate the rest of the London Calling books?
That's out of my hands.
I know it's out of your hands, but I'm just saying. Yeah. Pam from Sourcebooks, I know you're on. People have suggested in the chat that they would like to see a box set of the London Calling series. Just throwing that out there for future use. We've done that. We've done that. We've done that. Someone just saying that they love that the James Royces are just hilarious, and they love that you put that in there. A lot of these we have handled. I know that Tatiana wants to know, are there any rom-coms that you would throw out there that you love? I mean, I know there's some, I mean, I know that there are some that you love, but are there any that you would share with the group?
Oh, good Lord. It's always a complex one. So, I mean, a long time ago now, I think even before COVID, I watched everything Hugh Grant's ever been in. So everything Hugh Grant's ever been in, including the ones that aren't. Even obviously some of them aren't rom-coms. I love music and lyrics, which again is a Hugh Grant one, but it's a particular one I independently like, even independently of it being a Hugh Grant one, even though no one likes it. No one likes it, but I like it. I enjoy My Best Friend's Wedding. If you're talking about rom-com novels, I enjoyed The Romantic Agenda, which I think someone mentioned in chat. Sorry, when people talk about rom-coms, particularly when we're talking about within the boyfriend material, also I tend to immediately go to movies. Loads, far too many to mention, basically, is the answer.
Yeah, but there we go. There are people who like music and lyrics, so it's not just you. We are coming to the top of the hour, and it's the middle of the night, and I know you've had coffee, but it's the middle of the night. Alexis.
I've relaxed into it.
Everybody who has, public service announcement, if you ordered your books from Blue Willow, like I said, they're out the door, they're on the way. Please be careful when you open them, because we tried really carefully to pack everything nicely. So like, don't take scissors to the seams without being very deliberate about it, because I don't want anything to get cut. Because those things, there are limited. Oh my God, pop goes my heart. There are limited quantities. We did the best we could. We appreciate your support. I'm hoping I'm going to see you again in October for Paris Delacourt.
I believe that's the plan, yes.
Which is awesome. So thank you, Catherine. Please do careful surgery on your package. Alexis, you're extraordinary. I'm really not. I'm actually a very normal person. No. Oh, how about this? Your work is extraordinary.
I will accept.
Okay, thank you. Your work is extraordinary. It brings so many of us so much joy. And I'm so glad that we get to celebrate this with you. Everybody, thank you for being here. Like I said, we will get this edited and up on the YouTube channel, and I will share all of that with you. But thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a lovely evening. Thank you, Courtney, for backing me up technology-wise. Thank you, Sourcebooks, for making all of this possible. Thanks to my husband for building this balloon arch at short notice starting this afternoon. I am very grateful to all of you who are in this wonderful fandom, and I'm especially grateful to you, Alexis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and everybody have a wonderful evening, or whatever's left of your day, depending on where you are.
Exactly. Bye, y'all.
Bye.